Hey, what's up, everybody? Hope you're doing great. Give this video a chance because what we're going to talk about today is something that I feel like applies to literally everybody, no matter what. And what this was a life lesson that I seen to be very motivational from church. So, yeah, we're going to look at my church notes, and I know a lot of people of different religion or non religious are like, whoa, 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 I don't want to listen to that. You're trying to sell me religion. I just feel like this applies to everybody, and I got a lot of value from it. So today's message was a rule of life. And what that rule of life was is in order to be, you must be. And by doing that, you're practicing the way. You're making up yourself each and every single day. If you look at every day as a page in the book and then you do the little flick thing through all the pages real quick, what do those pages define you as being? You've seen the little stick character, people make it like move through the pages. Look at your life like that. And they go on to talk about how God didn't save us from something, but he saved us for something. Whatever that is that God created us to be, it's all going to be different. We all have different ways of living. But whatever it is, we need to practice and put in time in order to do that. And to correctly and be intentional about what it is we're being pulled towards, it requires us to live that out. We got to practice the way, as we said at the beginning of this video. And in order to do that, sometimes we have to say no. We're so limited in time. We're the busiest we've ever been in history. A lot of people have what's called hurried lives. And in order to live out the purpose, whatever that purpose is, sometimes it requires us saying no. So there's a lot of things, and there's a lot of good things that we could say yes to. Let's talk about that, saying yes. There's a lot of good things out there, but success isn't saying yes to a lot of good things, but rather saying yes only to the thing. Those things that support you getting closer to God or living out the life that you feel like is your mission to live out for this planet. So it came to this question: strip away all of the things that aren't like blank, and what's left? What are you left with? And that is ultimately what defines you of who you are. And this is where the no's could come in, the discipline, the habits that you live out every single day, and those super great yeses that you have the ability to use. And for those things that are like that, are what we need to be saying yes to. Whatever that plan or vision we have in our life is. And it's like I said, it's going to be completely different for everybody else. But if you're not planning, you're planning to fail. They brought out that quote out there. Who would have thought church was so motivational? And we need to think about this. There's different values that we need to have, but some of those values need to be built on rules, and we need these rules for guidance and direction. And then those values go into grace, love, spreading positivity, generosity, and loving the generations, the young as the old and the wise. So everything we have is God's, and we're thankful for that. But there's this job we have, and in order to really make a connection, think about making a connection as bridging your way to whatever the way is. There's two ways we get there, and we get there not alone. We get there with both God and people. So those relationships, they said this, and I circled it here in green, and I thought this was like, it wowed me when I heard it. And it said, a friend doubles your joy and divides your sorrow. And the Pastor Rob, went on to say, like, when you're happy about something, what is it like? What's the first thing you instinctively do? You like call up your friend or your family member and you like tell them about it. You're excited to share it. And then think about when you're sad and you're able to vent to a friend or a family member. It really like takes the load off your shoulders and you don't feel alone. So your connections are there. And if you think about it even beyond that, working out, building a business, especially with the building a business part, I got a lot of entrepreneurs in my network. And what you realize over time as your business grows and scales is that we can't do this alone. We got to start allowing and trusting others to complete certain tasks for us so we could focus our time on the way. And they said they brought our attention to our own jealousy as something, because sometimes we're looking at another individual like, man, I really wish I like it starts off as jealousy, but in a way it's kind of like what you want to be like. Man, I wish I had those kind of muscles that guy had, or the type of money that woman has, or I really wish like I had that job they have. And it's all about us trying to figure out how to get there, because that's kind of some awareness that we could have. Maybe this is a self-reflection journey for us, but sometimes what we're jealous of is like we're not willing to practice the way to get there, and that's the problem. So we need to be able to identify what it is and have people to help us out, and then figure out how to get from point A to point B. We were talking about all of this at church, and then they came up with another question: why am I the way I am? And I'm just sitting there like, wow. Because every single day, all of the decisions and ideas and things I've said and done in the past made me now. Like I'm living out like my past decisions. So when you think about it that way, the best time to plant a tree was 10 years ago. The second best time, if that was the goal, is literally right now, this second. Because if you're not going to do it now, when will you do it? If not now, then when is the question we need to be asking. And if we're not living out the dream, what God created us to be, or just your goals, it comes down to asking yourself this question and being completely honest with yourself. Why am I the way I am? Because I blank, 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 blank with my time. And if we go back to, like, if we thought about it and wrote it on a piece of paper, I want to be a mathematician. Am I learning, like, am I putting time into math, learning the addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, variables? I don't even remember the algebra 1, 2, 3, geometry, trigonometry, calculus, all of that other stuff, statistics. There's so many different subcategories within math, and together those create that. And we need to understand each of those different things. And think about that. If you apply that beyond religion or just math and just life altogether, there's these different categories that we need to pour time into. And we talked about that being others. We need to pour time. We need to pour into others. And then we need to pour into practice in the way, getting the right habits in place, because it starts when we wake up every single day. What do you do from the point of waking up until you go back to bed? That in between sleep, that's when we're really working and creating that story for ourselves. So sometimes we need to realize that we need to change things in order to grow. And we're only here because our past decisions and um okay, and the goals that I've had in the past. And I really loved this part. You are what you eat and what you secretly value and the rules that you follow. We're going to say that again. Let's think about that. You are what you eat. So if you're eating junk food, what kind of like energy are you going to have? Metaphorically, junky type of energy. You're not going to feel very well. Kind of junked out in a way. So you are what you eat and what you secretly value and the rules you follow. Wow. There's so many different directions we could go here. And then the past decisions and goals that we've had. They get pretty deep at church. So I can either have a rule or be ruled. Which one is it? Ask yourself. And whatever, if you have that rule, will I do it? Will I literally think about what it is I want? What is my passion? What do I feel like my mission here on earth is to do? What is God calling me to do? Will I actually do it? And it starts with starting. I was thinking about this, thinking about all of these lessons we learned from church, and I was just kind of scrolling through social media after, just getting to scroll in real quick, and it led me to some projects I've seen some people working on just out there in the algorithm. And some of them like, hey, keep doing your thing for sure, but it was kind of bad. Like early in the journey, not bad. It was just early in the journey. We're practicing, right? And I was just thinking like, man. And then I started thinking about how we're all at this same stage where we're not going to start off at like level 10. Usually not. Like that's like the lottery in a way. So it involves us just starting and getting through those awkward stages that we'd go through. Otherwise, we're limiting our growth. And that's where the real breakthroughs happen. That's where we get good through the 100 hours of time, and then the 1,000 hours of time, and then eventually 10,000 hours of time. It's hard not to get really good at doing something if you've done it over a long period of time and refuse those shortcuts, embrace the discipline for the purpose of godliness. And embracing discipline is how we learn. So, refusing shortcuts and embracing the awkward starts and just doing it over and over again. We're going to skip this little part real quick and come back to it. It leads us to time. And time always wins in the long run. In the long term, if you do something long enough, it's hard to not really get good at it. And they went on to talk about this analogy of this jar that you're trying to fill up with rocks, boulders, sand, and the order that they all need to go in for it to really fit. And we need to look at our days like this. Those really hard things to get in there, those big old huge boulders that's going to weigh a ton and hard to fit in, it might make sense if we got those out of the way first and got them in this jar. So whatever those tasks are in our day that are really, really important, like they weigh a ton towards our goal, it's important to get those done early, because if not now, then when? And then remember, we're living up to our past goals and values and rules we followed and the habits that we've put in place. So it's required. It's a requirement from God to get these big rocks out of the way first. And then it's easier to fit in these little rocks. And then you have time. They started talking about it, how when something comes up and you're invited by a family member or a friend, or an opportunity comes up, you have time for these little sand spots that show up to fill that into the schedule, because you're already ahead. You got the big rocks in, you got the little rocks in. Now all the little sand opportunities that come in, you have time for. But remember, we need to say yes to the great things and no to the things that don't have any business. Any business. So do the hard things first, the big things, and then everything else fits into place. So the question is, where will I be in a year from now? And then even beyond that, 10 years from now. And low-key, we already have the answer if you think about it. It's what we're doing right now. The habits in place right now. The lives we're living each and every single day right now. Hope you enjoyed this video, y'all.